At the age of 18, to pay for her mother's medical treatment, Natalie sold herself to a man 10 years her senior. Only later did she learn that he was the powerful head of the Darren family conglomerate, feared and respected in the business world for his ruthless tactics. Yet with her, he was uncharacteristically gentle. He doted on her so much that she began to mistake it for love, when she casually mentioned liking the cakes from a dessert shop in the Southern District. He bought the entire shop the next day just to have them make pastries exclusively for her. She had a fever in the middle of the night, and he put aside an international conference, flying back overnight to stay by her bedside, changing ice towels for her over and over again. On her 20th birthday, he took her to see the aurora. Amid the dazzling lights filling the sky, he kissed her fingertips and said, "Sweetheart, I'll celebrate every year with you from now on." She believed him. Until a stranger asked to meet her. "Let me introduce myself. My name is Ruth, Fidel's ex-girlfriend. 7 years ago, he proposed to me, but I chose my career and went abroad for further studies. Although we haven't been in contact all these years, I know that as long as I come back, he will return to me. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day." Now the story begins. After saying this, she took out a check and pushed it in front of Natalie. "I plan to get back together with him. But before that, I must clear away the women around him. Here's 50 million, more than enough for a little canary like you. Take it and leave him." Natalie felt her throat tighten. She had never known about Fidel's romantic past. She was young and had only ever loved him since birth. But he had loved someone else before. Thinking of all that had passed, she mustered her courage and said, "It's been so many years, Mr. Fidel probably forgot you long ago." Ruth smiled. "You probably don't know how much he loved me back then." She took out her phone. "How about this, let's make a bet. I'll send him a message now, saying I've returned to the country but my car broke down halfway, and ask him to come pick me up. Send him a message saying you got into a car accident. Let's see who he replies to first." Ruth looked up at her, confident of victory. "If he replies to me first, you take the money and leave. If he replies to you first, I'll back off." Natalie felt a whirlwind of emotions, restlessness, unease, hesitation, all ultimately coalescing into a desperate resolve to burn her bridges. Okay. After sending both messages simultaneously, every passing second became excruciatingly torturous. Natalie stared at the screen as countless memories with Fidel flashed through her mind like a revolving lantern. The tender concern in his eyes when he massaged her stomach during her period. The gentle kiss he placed on the corner of her lips amidst a snowstorm. The lingering intimacy when he pressed her against the floor-to-ceiling window on New Year's Eve. Scene after scene vividly unfolded before Natalie's eyes, pulling her thoughts further and further away, until an abrupt phone ring snapped her back to reality, where she saw Ruth smirk triumphantly before answering on speakerphone. "Address." Fidel's icy voice pierced through the speaker, nearly rupturing Natalie's eardrums. She clenched her lips until they turned white, knuckles whitening with tension, her breath nearly stopping altogether. Seeing her reaction, Ruth was extremely satisfied. "Wouldn't this be too much trouble for you? Don't you have other important things to do?" There was silence on the other end of the line for a few seconds. Fidel's tone remained light. "No." The address. Ruth wore an increasingly unrestrained smile on her face as she hung up the phone and leisurely sent over the address. Staring at her completely silent phone, Natalie felt her mind go blank as the color slowly drained from her face. The light in her eyes gradually dimmed as fragmented sounds forced their way from her throat. "Did he love you very much before?" Ruth smiled. "Yes. Would you like me to tell you how much he loves me?" She began enumerating leisurely. "He took me to see the aurora, promising to accompany me every year from then on. He bought an entire dessert shop just because I mentioned liking it once. He clearly hated cats the most, yet because I brought home a stray, he silently allowed it to sleep in the master bedroom." Natalie shivered all over. Every single thing he had done for her was actually him missing another through her. "Fair is fair. You should leave now." Ruth handed her the check once more. "Yes, I lost." Just a few words, yet they drained Natalie of all her strength. She lifted her hand, mangled and bloody from her own nails, to take the check, closing her eyes in despair, her voice utterly numb. "I'll disappear forever, just as you wish." Having obtained the desired promise, Ruth didn't linger any longer. She turned and walked away in her high heels. The world returned to utter silence. Natalie bit her lip until it bled, swallowing the surging emotions in her chest before dragging her exhausted body out of the cafe. Outside, a torrential downpour was raging. But she seemed oblivious as she wandered into the rain. She didn't even notice when Ruth drove past her, deliberately accelerating to splash a wave of water that drenched her completely. The car window rolled down, and she beamed brightly. "Sorry, I just thought this is how a drowned rat should look." With that, she drove off laughing, leaving in a cloud of dust. The rain kept pouring, Natalie returned to the villa completely drenched and disheveled. Her phone rang. It was a call from the school teacher. "Natalie, have you thought about that study abroad spot? Are you really going to give it up?" Hearing her teacher's sighing tone, Natalie's scattered thoughts finally cleared. She shook her head, gazing at the heavy rain outside the window, and said softly, "I won't give it up. I'll go myself." Hearing that her beloved student had finally come around, Teacher Blake's voice instantly became much more relieved. "You've finally come to your senses. That's wonderful. With your outstanding grades, this study abroad opportunity is the only one in the entire school. How could you possibly give it up? Prepare yourself well. You'll be leaving the country in 15 days. Natalie nodded, picked up a pen, and circled the departure date on the calendar. 15 days later, it happened to be Fidel's birthday. She opened the wardrobe and took out a men's suit inside. For the past 3 months, she had stayed up night after night designing and modifying it, all to give him this handmade birthday gift on that day. She had given up the opportunity to study abroad, just so she could stay by his side for a long time, accompanying him year after year. But now, it seemed there was no need for that anymore. Thinking of this, Natalie forced a bitter smile at the corner of her lips and threw the suit into the trash. Then she took a hot shower and buried herself under the covers, falling into a deep sleep. Perhaps from being caught in the rain, her body temperature kept rising uncontrollably, alternating between extreme chills and fever. She broke out in a clammy sweat all over. Her mind grew foggy and heavy, as if several mountains were pressing down on her body, between dreams and wakefulness. She heard her phone ring several times, but was trapped in a nightmare, unable to open her eyes. It wasn't until dawn approached that someone burst into the room and shook her awake. "Miss Natalie, wake up quickly, Mr. Fidel sent me to take you somewhere." Natalie forced her eyelids open and saw the figure of Fidel's assistant. She forced herself to endure the discomfort and got up to change clothes. The assistant drove her to the club entrance and then left. Natalie clutched her clothes tightly and, relying on memory, found the VIP lounge, only to hear lively voices coming from inside. "It's been an hour already. Natalie still hasn't arrived, even if she was uncomfortable after the car accident. With so many calls you made and even sending an assistant to pick her up, she's still dragging her feet. How inconsiderate. Just a canary kept for passing time and amusement. Playing cute occasionally can be charming, but constant tantrums show she doesn't know her place. Fidel, stop indulging her, letting her act spoiled and willful like this. She'll soon forget her own weight." Indeed, after Ruth left back then, you drowned your sorrows day and night, then casually kept this canary to distract yourself. Otherwise, Natalie would never have entered our circle in this lifetime. You've spoiled her for 4 years now, and with Ruth back, when do you plan to dispose of this burden? Fidel sat upright in his elevated seat, the light casting shadows across his aloof, cold features, making his voice sound even more detached. "My affairs are mine to handle. Why the rush? I was just worried about you and Ruth. You've waited 7 years for her, and now that she's finally back, don't use Natalie to provoke her. If you really drive her away again, you'll regret it to no end." That's right, all these years you couldn't bear to delete the photos with Ruth. Looking at them several times a day, every now and then you'd secretly go to America to check how she was doing. Whenever you heard she liked something, you'd pull strings to get it and have it delivered to her. Each word pierced Natalie's heart like needles, sending waves of sharp, lingering pain. So, from beginning to end, she was just a tool he used to divert attention and provoke Ruth. She turned to leave but was stopped by Ruth, who had just returned from the bathroom. With one hand gripping Natalie's wrist and the other pushing open the private room door, she cheerfully greeted the people inside with a smile. "What's everyone chatting about?" Such a lively discussion that even Fidel's little sister was too intimidated to come in. The group fell silent at the sight of them, all instinctively turning their gazes toward Fidel. He raised his head, briefly introduced both of them by name, then signaled for Natalie to come to his side. "Looks like the car accident wasn't too serious. Why didn't you answer my call?" Natalie suppressed the surging emotions in her heart and silently walked to his side. "Just minor scratches. I applied medicine and went to sleep. Didn't hear the phone. What's the matter at this late hour?" Seeing her quiet and uncomplaining today, Fidel was surprised but didn't probe further. "Nothing special. Just called you over to hang out." Natalie felt a sting in her heart. Was she called over to hang out? Or to provoke Ruth? No sooner had Ruth paid her to leave Fidel to prepare for reconciliation with Fidel, than Fidel tried to use her to provoke Ruth and hasten his reunion with Ruth. Their romantic tug-of-war made her merely a pawn. Natalie's mind was in turmoil, yet she said nothing, sitting silently, and Fidel remained as doting as ever, spoiling her rotten. He draped his coat over her shoulders, fed her fruit, even wiped the milk stain from the corner of her lips only for his eyes to darken mid-motion before he chuckled and kissed her. Natalie closed her eyes, but the initial flutter of excitement was long gone. She looked up and saw Ruth watching their direction with stormy eyes. He knew his purpose of provoking Ruth had been achieved. Yet all this doting came to an abrupt halt when Ruth collapsed onto the sofa with a frown. The crowd gasped. "Ruth, what's wrong?" "I don't know, I'm in so much pain." "Maybe it's my stomach, just get me some medicine." Fidel suddenly changed his expression and could no longer contain himself, abruptly standing up. When he saw the alcohol on her table, his eyes darkened further, his voice laced with uncontrolled concern. "Don't you know about your stomach condition? How dare you drink alcohol? I'm taking you to the hospital." With that, he scooped her up in his arms and turned to leave immediately, from beginning to end. He never paid the slightest attention to Natalie again. Natalie closed her eyes. Knowing her role in this play had come to an end, she forced her feverish body to rise, excused herself, and followed him out. In the following days, Natalie stayed home to recuperate while sorting through her belongings. Fidel had given her jewelry and handbags, photos they took together where she pulled him close, the shirts and mugs she bought for him, except for some essential daily necessities. She threw all these things away without keeping a single item. Looking at the gradually emptying room, Natalie had a momentary daze, recalling many faded memories. Fidel holding her while watching movies on the couch, the two of them staying up late assembling Legos together, planting a balcony full of flowers side by side. She had fantasized countless times that such a life would last forever, without end, but now, it seemed her beautiful dream was about to end, lost in thought. The sound of a car echoed through the courtyard. Natalie looked up and saw Fidel returning with Ruth. His expression remained calm, while Ruth smiled and kept finding topics to talk about. As they chatted and laughed their way to the living room, seeing the empty scene, Fidel frowned slightly. Why are so many things missing from the house? Cleared out some unused clutter. Natalie lowered her eyes and casually made an excuse. Fidel didn't think much of it either. He glanced at her before shifting his gaze to Ruth. Ruth isn't feeling well, and there's some trouble with the house, so she's staying here for a few days. Natalie nodded. All right, he was the sugar daddy, she was the trophy mistress. He didn't actually owe her any explanations. Noticing her unusually indifferent attitude today, Fidel frowned, seemingly sensing something amiss, just as he was about to inquire. Ruth changed the subject. "Fidel, can I have the south-facing bedroom? Also, you know I'm allergic to pollen. Could we temporarily move those flowers from the balcony? And these rugs keep catching my high heels. I don't really like them. Could we remove them?" Fidel grunted in acknowledgement and instructed the butler to arrange everything according to her wishes. Ruth curled her lips into a smirk, casting a sidelong glance at Natalie with undisguised pride in her eyes. Watching as the butler and staff removed the carpets and flower pots, clearing out the master bedroom to make way, the home gradually transformed into an unfamiliar sight. Natalie felt a pang of bitterness rise in her heart. After the heaviness came a wave of relief. She comforted herself inwardly. After all, she was leaving soon, and none of this would concern her anymore. With this thought in mind, she silently lowered her head and went upstairs alone to her room. The next day, Ruth's voice came clearly through the window. Reaching the second floor, "Why are you still keeping this oil painting I made? If you like it, I can paint you a new one tomorrow." "Okay, the weather is so nice today, come take a walk with me. The doctor said I need to walk more to recover faster. I'm a bit hungry." "Fidel, could you cook me a meal? It's been so long since I've tasted your cooking." Fidel rarely responded, but Ruth's requests, he fulfilled each and every one. He sat motionless as a mannequin in the living room for 2 hours, accompanied her for a half-hour walk outside, then personally cooked an entire table full of dishes. Natalie took all of this in, and through his eyes and body language, could tell he was happy. Perhaps this was the everlasting future he truly desired. That evening, Natalie went downstairs to fetch a glass of water. When she returned, she saw Ruth in her room, holding the keepsake left by her father. In that instant, Natalie tensed up completely and rushed forward to reclaim the watch. Ruth, being a head taller, simply raised her arm higher and looked down at her triumphantly. "That shabby watch, you care so much about it, must be important." Her, without hesitation, she replied, "Yes, it's very important, give it back to me." Hearing this, Ruth smirked. "I might return it to you if you kneel before me. Consider it an act of mercy." Natalie stared at her in disbelief. Ruth. "I've already agreed to leave, Mr. Fidel likes you, and I never intended to compete with you. Why are you still targeting me?" "Why? Because I can't stand you, even though you promised to leave. Just thinking about how you've monopolized Fidel for so many years makes me sick to my stomach. I just want to vent my anger. Anyway, this watch is in my hands now. I'll give you 10 seconds. If you don't do as I say, then say goodbye to this watch forever." Seeing her arrogant and domineering attitude, Natalie felt utterly helpless and sorrowful. The countdown went from 10 to 1. Ruth made a motion as if to throw the watch away. Natalie had no choice left, forcing herself to kneel on the ground. Is this acceptable now, Ms. Ruth? Only when she saw the humiliated expression on her face did Ruth feel satisfied. But instead of returning the watch to Natalie, she raised her hand and threw it straight out the window. Natalie gasped and rushed over to salvage it, only to accidentally bump into Ruth. Ruth tumbled down the stairs, instantly covered in blood. Fidel happened to witness the scene and hurried forward. What happened? Ruth shrank into his arms, her eyes red as she turned the tables, claiming she had accidentally broken Natalie's watch, which made her so angry that she pushed her down the stairs. Fidel, his usually indifferent face flushed with faint anger. You'd start a fight over a watch. Natalie, have I spoiled you too much these years? Meeting his icy gaze, Natalie felt unbearable grief, struggling to explain through the heartache. Mr. Fidel, she forced me first. Enough. In his fury, Fidel wouldn't listen to another word, sharply cutting her off. He directly called the bodyguards and ordered them to lock her in the freezer to reflect on her actions, then picked up Ruth and left. Natalie was restrained by several bodyguards and taken straight to the freezer. In the sub-zero freezer, Natalie huddled in a corner, layers of frost forming on her body. She felt as if her blood was freezing solid, her body trembling uncontrollably. Time seemed to freeze, becoming unbearably slow. Clutching the broken watch in her hand, memories of happy moments with her parents flooded her mind. In a daze, she heard the sound of a door opening and lifted her tear-blurred eyes. A figure slowly approached her, and instinctively she called out Mom, whispering the word softly. Mom, I fell for the wrong person, I regret it. Faintly hearing these words, Fidel frowned slightly and instinctively stepped in front of Natalie to stare at her. What did you just say? Regret what? She no longer had the strength to answer. Unable to hold on any longer, her vision went dark as she lost consciousness. She didn't know how much time had passed when she woke up again. Natalie found herself in the hospital. As she opened her eyes, she saw Fidel standing guard by the hospital bed, reaching out to touch her. You're awake. How do you feel? Recalling what had happened before losing consciousness, Natalie trembled and closed her eyes, avoiding his touch. Where's my watch? Mr. Fidel, please give it back to me. Fidel stared at her repeatedly, and only after confirming she was unharmed did he take out the repaired watch and hand it to her. You care so much about this watch, I've already had it fixed. You hit someone, and I've punished you for it. Let's consider the matter settled, and don't dwell on it any further. Seeing her father's keepsake return to her intact, Natalie felt tears welling up in her eyes almost instantly, but she held back, looking at Fidel. I don't mean to make a fuss, Mr. Fidel. These years together were just about mutual benefit. I can't and shouldn't demand anything from you. From now on, I'll know my place and won't cross the line again. For some reason, seeing her like this, Fidel felt a surge of anger, his tone turning cold. Are you sulking with me? Or trying to draw a line between us? Facing his sudden coldness, Natalie wasn't as apprehensive as before, her voice remaining calm. I'm not being stubborn, just stating the facts. As for drawing a clear line, perhaps so. After all, soon I'll. With every word she spoke, Fidel's expression darkened further. Just as he was about to speak, Ruth's call came through. Fidel, I've booked a table at a really good restaurant. Will you come with me? In an instant. Fidel regained control of his emotions. He had neither the time nor the mood to listen to Natalie any longer. Turning on his heel and leaving abruptly, the door slammed shut, cutting off her unfinished words, disappear forever in her throat, watching his retreating figure that never once looked back. She smiled a bitter, self-mocking smile. After several days in the hospital, Natalie's weakened body gradually recovered. During that time, no one came to visit, but Ruth sent numerous messages almost every day, in photos and videos. She sat in the passenger seat snacking, while the usually fastidious Fidel would tear open the food packaging for her. When she mentioned it had been a while since she visited his parents, he took the initiative to bring her back to the family home for a gathering. If she casually complimented something in a magazine, that very item would appear before her within an hour. Yet such meticulous care and attention were things Natalie had never experienced. No matter how much Fidel had doted on her before, he would never have allowed her to eat in the car, nor would he have ever considered taking her to meet his parents, let alone patiently jotting down every casual remark she made. She finally understood the time, effort, and affection spent on keeping a canary could never rival what one would devote to loving a person. Only Ruth was worthy of Fidel's complete tolerance and attention. On the day she was discharged from the hospital, Natalie's roommates came to see her and took her along to a class gathering. The gathering was held at a trendy internet-famous restaurant. The moment she walked in, she could feel some malicious gazes directed her way. Well, if it isn't our top-ranked student. Didn't you move out of school ages ago and cut ties with classmates? What brings you to this gathering today? Not busy keeping your sugar daddy company. Maybe she got dumped by her sugar daddy. Some people look all innocent, but who knows how messy their private lives really are. For money, they'd even go for men in their 50s. TSK, TSK, TSK. Such vanity, it's something we could never imitate. Several girls who had always disliked Natalie gathered together, making snide remarks. Her roommates were furious upon hearing this and couldn't help but snap back. What nonsense are you spouting? Natalie moved out to live with her boyfriend. It's not some 50-year-old man like you're claiming. Hilarious, a boyfriend. I've seen Natalie getting into a luxury car late at night multiple times. If that's not being a sugar baby, then what is? Instead of lying here, you should be advising her to stop selling herself for money. She's ruining the reputation of our university. This utterly shameless insult completely ignited the fury in her roommates' hearts. Just as they were about to turn around to teach those people a lesson, they caught sight of a familiar figure outside the window from the corner of their eyes and screamed in excitement, "You foul-mouthed gossips! Look carefully, that's Natalie's boyfriend." In an instant, everyone in the room followed their gaze. The moment they saw Fidel, the whole group widened their eyes in disbelief. Fidel? Are you kidding me? Fidel? Who does he think he is? He'd actually be interested in Natalie. Natalie isn't even fit to tie his shoes. Whether I'm worthy or not isn't for you to decide, I'll prove it to you right now. Fidel had barely appeared when the roommates suddenly found their voices, pulling Natalie along to confront him. Amidst the stunned gazes of the crowd, they had just turned around when they saw Fidel walk to the passenger side and personally help a woman out of the car. The two stood close together, their intimate posture clearly beyond that of ordinary friends. Among the onlookers, one girl immediately recognized Ruth the moment she saw her face. Isn't that Fidel's ex-girlfriend Ruth? They were seniors at my brother's alma mater. Their relationship caused quite a stir back then, and their photo together winning the Olympiad award is still displayed in the school's showcase. So that's how it is. Fidel is so devoted, how could he possibly be with Natalie? In my opinion, it's just some people trying to latch onto Fidel, when clearly they're being kept by some 50 or 60-year-old man and won't admit it. As soon as these words were spoken, the situation instantly reversed. Everyone turned their scornful gazes toward Natalie. Amid the chaos, Fidel glanced up toward the restaurant and said something to his assistant. Soon, the assistant strode briskly in their direction. Seeing this, the roommates thought there might still be hope. Nervously clutching Natalie's hand, hoping the assistant was coming for her, the assistant did walk up to the four of them, but merely passed by without stopping, heading straight for the restaurant owner, Mr. Fidel and MS. Ruth would like to have lunch here today. Please clear the place, Mr. Fidel prefers quiet. With such a big customer, the restaurant owner was overjoyed and quickly arranged for the staff to compensate the customers by offering free meals to clear the place. Natalie's table was naturally asked to leave as well. As the group marched out in a grand procession, Fidel happened to arrive with Ruth. Natalie didn't want to face them and lowered her head to avoid their gaze, but those girls seized the opportunity and started shouting loudly, taking advantage of the crowd. "Mr. Fidel, we're from the design school of S University. Do you happen to know a student in our department named Natalie?" At the mention of that name, Fidel paused mid-step. His gaze sweeping through the crowd, Ruth spotted Natalie in the corner immediately. Her eyes darted mischievously as she answered before he could speak. "What's wrong? It's nothing serious. It's just that she keeps daydreaming and spreading rumors about having connections with Mr. Fidel, tarnishing Mr. Fidel's reputation. That's why we wanted to verify the truth." Hearing these words, Ruth slightly loosened her grip on Fidel's hand and stared fixedly at him. "Fidel, do you and Natalie have some kind of relationship?" Hearing this, Fidel slightly raised his eyes. Ruth wasn't unaware of the relationship between Natalie and him. He could clearly see that the group before him was humiliating Natalie, yet Ruth still asked the question they all knew the answer to. Perhaps she was testing just how important Natalie truly was in his heart. If he admitted it now, it would only complicate his reconciliation with Ruth, so he denied flatly, "Don't know her." Hearing Fidel's nonchalant tone, the group of students burst into laughter, casting mocking glances at Natalie. Facing this undisguised malice, Natalie closed her eyes. Amidst the waves of ridicule, her phone vibrated several times. Upon opening it, she saw a message from Ruth. "Fidel doesn't love you at all. He'll neither give you commitment nor care about your feelings. Your 4 years of companionship mean nothing to him, no matter how pampered a canary is. It remains just a pet that can be discarded at will. It can never soar to the branches and become a phoenix." Natalie silently read the message, recalling how 2 years ago her roommates had caught her and Fidel kissing at the school gate. Back then, her roommates had gone wild, eagerly asking what relationship Fidel had with her. Before she could answer, Fidel pulled her close and murmured 4 words with his thin lips: boyfriend and girlfriend. It was from that moment on Natalie assumed they were already in a romantic relationship, but only now does Natalie realize it was all just her own wishful thinking. He had been waiting for Ruth to come back all along, that lover's position was forever reserved for her. She was merely a tool he used to heal his heartbreak and divert his attention, destined to be just a fleeting encounter, an insignificant passerby in his life. After returning, Natalie discovered that what happened at the gathering had been posted on the university forum, and everyone at S University was discussing it. Where did this clown come from, trying to latch onto Fidel with such rumors? She should take a good look at herself, probably not even worthy of polishing his shoes, Mr. Fidel is the crown prince of Beijing's elite circle, the one he loves is the heiress of the Colton family from City R, and his devotion hasn't wavered for years. How could he possibly be involved with some poor girl? Must be delusional. I heard this person hooked up with some old man in his 50s, and only made up this lie after being caught by classmates so vain and shameless. Being classmates with such a person is truly a disgrace to S University. As she scrolled through the endless stream of online mockery and insults, Natalie felt as if a dark cloud had settled over her heart, suffocatingly gloomy. Her roommates tried every possible way to speak up for her, but their explanations were quickly drowned out by the overwhelming tide of condemnation. Unnoticed by anyone, there was nothing she could do but shut down all her social media accounts, repeating to herself over and over that this would all be over soon. As the days passed, Natalie completed her graduation procedures and then returned home to explain her study abroad plans to her mother, who had recovered from illness. Busy with her own affairs, she hadn't seen Fidel for several days. When she returned to the villa, she found him waiting for her on the sofa. What have you been up to these days? You've been nowhere to be seen. School matters. Natalie lowered her eyes and casually made up an excuse. School, aren't you about to graduate soon? What could possibly keep you so busy? Natalie didn't want him to know she was preparing to study abroad, so she evaded. Just graduation stuff keeping me busy. Fidel frowned slightly, instinctively sensing something was off. Just as she was about to speak, Natalie's phone rang. She pressed the answer button and turned to leave the room, faintly hearing a male voice. Fidel's eyes darkened slightly as he turned off his phone and followed her. The male student had been entrusted by Teacher Blake to deliver the school's uniformly processed visa and some documents to her on his way. After politely thanking her classmate, she turned around with the items in hand and met Fidel's intense gaze. Who is he? What does he want with you? Natalie clutched the bag behind her back, her smile fading as she offered a quiet explanation. A classmate, just delivering my diploma. Seeing her evasive gaze, Fidel's expression grew even colder. What kind of classmate is so kind-hearted to personally deliver it here? Does he like you? Hearing this, Natalie was slightly taken aback, unsure why he would make such an association. Just helping out since it was on the way. We're just ordinary classmates. Who he likes is none of my business. But it's definitely not me. After listening to her explanation, Fidel stared at her for a long while, his tone icy. No matter what your relationship is, you're not allowed to have any further contact with him, Mr. Fidel. This is my personal freedom in choosing friends. Natalie instinctively wanted to argue back, but before she could finish speaking, he interrupted her. From the day you agreed to make a deal with me, you lost your freedom in choosing friends. I can't tolerate any impurities in my sight. If you keep getting involved with such people, there's no need for you to stay by my side anymore. As soon as the words were spoken, Ruth emerged impeccably dressed, smiling as she took his arm and got into the car. Fidel, I'm ready, let's go. Watching the sports car speed away, Natalie closed her eyes. Right now, she didn't want to stay by his side, she only wanted freedom. The deal between them is about to come to an end. Fidel on his birthday. Natalie woke up very early. She opened the window for some fresh air and saw Fidel chatting with a few brothers in the garden. Fidel, I heard this birthday of yours was personally arranged by Ruth. She's been sticking to you every day lately. If she takes the initiative to ask to get back together at the birthday party, would you agree? Why even ask? Of course I would. Faced with his brother's teasing, Fidel maintained his usual composed expression. We'll see when the time comes. TSK. Looking at your confident demeanor, you must have gotten insider information that Ruth would confess to you today. But if you get back together with Ruth, what about Natalie? Why not hand her over to me? She's got some looks, let me have some fun with her for a few days and I'll help you take care of her. Since you put it that way, I'd like a piece of the action too. I've had my eye on that girl for a while. Just imagining her calling me big brother in bed makes my bones melt. Hearing their malicious laughter, Natalie felt a chill run down her spine. She bit her lip hard, making no sound, and instinctively looked toward Fidel. The corners of his lips curled slightly, but his eyes held no warmth. After following me for so many years, you still don't understand the rules. What I set my eyes on, even if I discard it, no one else is allowed to touch. Later, I'll assign her to a sinecure in the assistant department. Let's see who dares to make a move on her. Seeing his dark expression, the brothers felt a tremor of unease and quickly tried to smooth things over. Just kidding. Natalie has been with you for 4 years and still adores you so much. Even if you made her a mere decorative vase in the office, she'd probably be willing without complaint. But once you and Ruth get back together, what if she can't stand Natalie and forces you to dismiss her? After all, you've kept her around for 4 years, wouldn't you feel reluctant then? Fidel took a sip of coffee, his tone turning cold again. Keeping her was just a pastime to kill boredom. Why would I feel reluctant? Hearing his indifferent tone, Natalie no longer felt heartbroken. After finishing her, she was about to go downstairs for water when she bumped into Ruth face to face. The moment their eyes met, Ruth flashed a hint of impatience in her gaze. You took my money, when exactly are you going to leave? My patience has its limits. Natalie opened her phone, glanced at the group notification from her advisor, and replied calmly, Don't worry, after today, I'll disappear completely. I won't appear again. What do you mean, won't appear again? Startled by the familiar voice, both turned their heads to see Fidel standing at the doorway. Ruth felt her heart skip a beat and quickly stepped forward to change the subject. Nothing much, we were just chatting casually. It's still quite a distance from here to the villa. Shouldn't we get going? Fidel didn't dwell on it further. After checking the time, he nodded. We should leave now. With that, he picked up the car keys. Ruth changed into high heels, while Natalie remained motionless. Seeing her lack of response, Fidel reminded her again, What are you standing there for? Aren't you changing into your dress? They were heading to the birthday party venue. Natalie had no intention of attending. You go ahead, don't worry about me. Faced with her indifferent attitude, Fidel's eyes darkened. If you don't come with us now, don't call me crying when you miss the banquet later. It won't come to that. Her tone was so certain that it inexplicably unsettled Fidel. As if something was slipping beyond his control, he frowned. Wanting to ask more, Ruth grabbed his hand and urged him to leave. Since she's busy, let's not wait any longer. It would be impolite to keep the guests waiting. I've prepared a surprise and can't wait to show you. With just a few words, she diverted Fidel's attention. He took one last look at her before leaving with Ruth. Natalie slowly packed her belongings before taking one final look around the villa she had lived in for 5 years. Everything here had once made her mistake it for love. Fidel bought her the piano, her favorite scented candles, even the cat he indulged her in keeping in the bedroom. But now, she finally understood these tender gestures were never meant for her. They were for the woman named Ruth. He had someone he liked, and she was about to embark on her new life. Without any hesitation, she dragged her suitcase and left, heading straight to the airport. Before takeoff, the flight attendant repeatedly reminded everyone to turn off their phones. Just before powering off, Natalie seemed to remember something. Taking a deep breath, she still opened the chat with Fidel and sent a farewell message. Mr. Fidel, I won't be attending your birthday celebration today. Wishing you a wonderful time. Thank you for your care over the years. Goodbye forever. Today the sky is clear, not a cloud in sight. The days without him from now on will also be endlessly sunny. The birthday venue sparkled with lights, everyone placing great importance on Fidel's banquet, waiting to curry favor with his influence. Amidst the clinking of glasses and lively conversations among the guests, the host of the banquet grew increasingly sullen. After waiting another 10 minutes, Fidel asked in a low voice, Has she arrived yet? Not yet, Mr. Fidel. Miss Natalie hasn't shown up. The assistant answered respectfully from the side, noticing Fidel's expression with a hint of trepidation, for this was a clear sign of his extreme displeasure. What on earth is this woman playing at? I explicitly told her never to be late. Fidel frowned as he scanned the room. Nearly all the guests had arrived, yet this Natalie chose to be fashionably late on such an important occasion. Oh come now, Fidel, don't wait for her. She's just fond of these little tantrums, might even stand you up at the last minute. Ruth slipped her slender fingers onto his shoulder, her crimson lips curling into a mocking smile. Mr. Fidel, why make us all wait so long for some little canary? Exactly, Mr. Fidel, that woman has no manners at all, daring to be late to your birthday banquet. Why should we wait for her? Let's begin without her. The surrounding guests quickly chimed in after Ruth's remark. Everyone had grown impatient from waiting, though none had dared voice their complaints before Fidel until now. Hearing this, Fidel pressed his temples. Natalie had always been well behaved. How could she possibly not show up without reason? Suppressing his anger, he prepared to call Natalie to deliver an ultimatum. But the moment he opened his phone, the topmost text message caught his eye. Mr. Fidel, I'm planning to go abroad. goodbye, slap. The moment he read the text message, Fidel's fingers gripping the wine glass tightened instantly, and the glass shattered in the air the next second, emitting a violent sound. This scene instantly silenced all the commotion in the room. Fidel, your hand. Ruth flusteredly grabbed his wrist, only to have it slapped away by him. Fidel frowned deeply, blood slowly dripping from his fingers. Natalie, how dare she? How dare she skip her own birthday banquet? How dare she cheat? He stared fixedly at the two words going abroad on the text message, his face filled with disbelief. Clearly, she loved him like a puppy, following him around every day. Clearly, just a few months ago, she had been joyfully preparing gifts for him, even if every woman in the world would betray him. How could Natalie bear to go abroad? Fidel angrily dialed her number directly, but all he got in response was the cold, mechanical voice repeating on the other end, "The number you have dialed is powered off." For the 10th time, he dialed the number repeatedly, yet Natalie seemed to be deliberately avoiding him, her phone remaining powered off. Why does this Natalie keep ruining her plans? Ruth felt secretly annoyed seeing his anxious expression. She stepped forward, linking her arm with his, and spoke intimately. "Fidel, forget about her. The guests are getting impatient. Let's just have a good time ourselves. Someone like her would only lower your standards if she came." "Shut up." Veins bulged at his temples as he furiously cut off Ruth's words, startling everyone present. At this moment, Fidel was already overwhelmed by Natalie's accusation of infidelity, no longer caring about his birthday banquet as he turned and stormed out. Ruth panicked upon seeing this, chasing after him in her high heels and gripping his arm, unwilling to let go. "Fidel, where are you going? The banquet is about to start. Get lost," he roared, turning back with bloodshot eyes. "Don't you dare stop me again." Stumbling back in fear, she could only watch as he slammed the door and stormed off. The sports car raced through the night, Fidel repeatedly redialing the number, but it remained switched off, for some reason, even though he knew Ruth was the woman he loved most. Right now all he could think about was Natalie's face, the way she smiled at him, the way she trembled when he held her by the waist and pulled her into his embrace, the way she clung to him on his birthday last year and said she loved him most. At that moment, Fidel suddenly recalled Ruth and Natalie's unusual behavior that morning. When he passed by, he clearly heard Natalie say something like, "Won't appear again." Could it be she had already decided to leave his side? Damn it! A sense of foreboding rose within him as Fidel slammed his fist against the steering wheel, turning the car around before disappearing into the night. The sports car screeched to a halt in front of the villa, and Fidel hurriedly stepped inside. The interior was pitch black until Fidel flicked on the lights, revealing the unchanged house. Only her slippers were missing at the entrance. While the living room Ruth's belongings gradually filled the space, and traces of Natalie's life were slowly disappearing, Fidel felt an indescribable tightness in his chest. He walked further inside, hoping Natalie was just asleep. He searched frantically, room by room. In the bathroom, her toothbrush was gone, and only his and Ruth's remained on the towel rack. In the kitchen, only a faint circular mark remained where her favorite mug used to be. All Natalie's traces seemed to have evaporated. Fidel, refusing to believe it, went to the guest bedroom where Natalie usually stayed. Pushing open the door, he was met with utter silence. This room was once filled with all sorts of adorable stuffed toys by Natalie. The place now felt like an empty shell, utterly devoid of life's warmth. Only the bulky furniture remained, everything else had vanished without a trace. Her cosmetics were gone from the dressing table, and the wardrobe stood completely bare. Even Natalie's favorite photo, the one of Fidel holding and kissing her, that always sat on the nightstand, had disappeared without a trace. Not a single strand of hair was left behind, as if no one had ever lived here. Fidel's memories of Natalie seemed like nothing more than a dream. Natalie. Staring at the empty room, Fidel seemed provoked. He growled her name and punched the wardrobe door. Just then, he suddenly noticed an exquisitely wrapped box placed in the corner of the wardrobe. Fidel felt his heart pounding violently, overwhelmed by a strong premonition that this seemed to be something Natalie had left for him. His fingers trembling, he took out the gift box and untied the ribbon. Inside the box lay an exquisitely crafted wristwatch, clearly expensive. Beside the box was an envelope containing a greeting card and several photographs. "Mr. Fidel, thank you for restoring the keepsake my father left me. I've struggled for a long time about what birthday gift to give you. Now, let me repay you with this watch. A watch represents time. At least these years with you have been happy for me. But from now on, let's never meet again." Fidel stood frozen in place, his hands trembling uncontrollably. All the women he had been with undoubtedly sought wealth and fame, but Natalie never mentioned a word of it. Her every sentence spoke only of their bond. He picked up the remaining photos, flipping through them one by one. The first one was Fidel's first time taking her to a cocktail party. She stood by his side in a white gown, completely at ease, smiling warmly. The second showed her university graduation ceremony, where Fidel rarely took time off but made an exception to bring her flowers at her school. The third photo captured Fidel accompanying her to visit her mother in the hospital, insisting on taking a silly group selfie with all three of them, and the last one was taken by Fidel, her blissful, childlike smile. Fidel clutched the photo desperately, his throat choked as if blocked by something, making even breathing difficult. Looking at these photos, scenes from their past flashed through their minds like slideshows. Ruth's appearance had once made him loathe her very existence, yet he'd forgotten how precious their shared feelings had been. She loved him with such effort and devotion, yet he had long since lost this simple-hearted girl. He slumped onto the bedside. The wristwatch slipping from his palm, Fidel lowered his head, staring at the coldly glimmering watch face. So she had truly and completely left his side. It turned out her recent unusual coldness and melancholy were preparations for leaving. Every emotion she showed had its traceable reasons. He thought she was just a substitute, thought she would never leave, thought he would never regret it. But now, the villa was terrifyingly quiet, without her voice, without her warmth. "Natalie, come back." Fidel's voice was extremely hoarse, as if squeezed from his chest, but this time, no one responded to him anymore. In her first week in Paris, newly arrived, Natalie was slightly adjusting. Yet she didn't dwell on these matters, instead throwing herself wholeheartedly into the world of design, spending entire days immersed in the studio. Back then, she had excellent grades but gave up her rightful study abroad opportunity due to her impoverished family circumstances. Moreover, staying by Fidel's side all along, she became enamored with his tender affection and naturally cast academic matters aside. But now, with Natalie having left him, she could pursue her own dreams. When her mentor extended an olive branch, she didn't hesitate to come here. The first thing after arriving in Paris was her mentor showing her around the unfamiliar campus. This school is a renowned art university both domestically and internationally, with an exceptionally rich artistic atmosphere that quickly immersed Natalie in its embrace. "Natalie, it's truly wonderful that you chose to come here to study. Since you arrived, I've never seen anyone as talented as you." The mentor held Natalie's hand and spoke with heartfelt sincerity. Hearing the mentor's words, Natalie couldn't help but feel moved. Back when she was with Fidel, he had threatened her with a furrowed brow, "If you still want money to treat your mother's illness, stay by my side and don't go anywhere." Remembering the man who had hindered her growth, Natalie shook her head with a smile and remained silent. From the moment she left Fidel, she was destined to become a free bird. She watched the young people coming and going with their sketchboards or musical instruments, her excitement growing, eager to join them immediately. After the mentor showed her around the teaching building and the studios they would need after class, he left first. Natalie followed the mentor's advice and rented a small apartment just a 5-minute walk from the school, saving a lot of time. During every class, she was the most active one in interacting with the teacher. Perhaps because this was a rare learning opportunity, she worked harder than anyone else. That evening, the studio was once again left with only Natalie inside. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't even notice the sky had darkened. Natalie rolled her stiff shoulders, gathered her sketches and was about to leave when she suddenly heard piano music drifting from somewhere unknown. The piano melody was extraordinarily beautiful, her father's favorite piece during his lifetime. Natalie found herself unconsciously moved by the music, her eyes moistening. She became completely entranced. As if this were a symphony performed solely for her in the silent corridor, Natalie was determined to find the source of the music. Carrying her satchel, she followed the melody to a small auditorium. Pushing open the heavy auditorium doors, she saw only the slender silhouette of a man's back. He sat at the piano in the center of the stage, playing with complete abandon, and the music he performed seemed to come alive, gently flowing into Natalie's heart, just like that. The two maintained a silent, mutual understanding without disturbing each other. The man sat on the stage with his back to Natalie, while Natalie was the sole audience member of the concert, seated in the front row below. As the piece concluded, the man closed the piano lid and bowed to Natalie in the audience, and she erupted into applause. "Thank you for listening to my performance." The man's voice was deep and gentle, somehow strikingly familiar to Natalie. The next moment, their eyes met. And Natalie's breath caught. The person before her wasn't a stranger, but someone Natalie had thought she'd never see again. "Is it you, Bennett?" The man on stage froze, his shock impossible to conceal. "Natalie, it's really you." Bennett leaped down from the stage. As he gazed at the now graceful young woman before him, an unprecedented joy surged through him. He gradually approached Natalie and gave her a slightly emotional, gentle hug. "Natalie, long time no see." His voice trembled. his embrace carrying a comforting warmth that made Natalie let go of all her worries in that moment. Bennett was her childhood neighbor and older brother figure. Due to sudden family circumstances, she and her mother had to move away overnight during their youth, leaving no chance to even say goodbye to Bennett. This matter had always been a lingering regret in her heart. As an adult, she often thought about this childhood companion, feeling guilty for leaving without a word. Yet she never expected fate to be so kind, allowing them to reunite here of all places. By the way, Natalie, what are you doing here? I came here to study abroad. What about you, Bennett? Bennett paused for a moment upon hearing this, then smiled. I did too. The year after you left, my whole family moved to Paris. It's just, I never expected to see you again here. It seems we'll be seeing each other often from now on. He extended his right hand to Natalie, his face radiating unconcealed happiness. Natalie froze momentarily, blushing as she shook his hand, just like that first shy and beautiful meeting in their new home years ago. From that day onward, the two would meet at their appointed time every single day. After class, Natalie went to the studio and began making clothes according to the design sketches from the lesson. When the sound of piano music drifted in, she would go to the auditorium and sit in the front row as an audience member for Bennett. The two spent their days together, and occasionally, Bennett would sit beside Natalie to teach her a piece on the piano. As time passed, with Bennett by her side, Natalie gradually let go of the pain from back home and forgot about Fidel, who had once affected her so deeply. That day, after parting with Bennett, Natalie returned home but faintly sensed something amiss. The potted plant by the front door seemed to have been moved from its usual spot. She tried to reassure herself that she might just be overthinking it, but when she took out her keys to unlock the door, she found it wasn't even locked. It opened with just a gentle push. Natalie suppressed the fear rising in her heart, gripping her umbrella as a makeshift weapon, and cautiously stepped inside. The door was gently pushed open, and the scene inside froze her in place. Her apartment had been ransacked. The chair in the living room was overturned, shoes at the entrance were scattered, every drawer had been pulled open, clothes from the wardrobe were strewn across the floor, and even the photo frame on the bedside table had been smashed. Someone had been here. Who's there? Who's there? Sharp-eyed Natalie suddenly noticed the bedroom door wide open, the curtains billowing wildly in the fierce wind, and there a figure leaped out through the window. Ah! Natalie let out a terrified scream, her legs giving way as she collapsed to the floor. With trembling hands, she fumbled for her phone, ready to call for help, but to her surprise, her first instinct was to dial Fidel. But the next second, she fiercely crushed that thought. Now she had no one to rely on, the only one who could help her was herself. She quickly dialed the emergency number and went downstairs to wait for help. After the police investigation, Natalie's cash at home was all stolen, and some valuable jewelry was also missing. Fortunately, she didn't confront the thief directly, as the police found a knife left on the balcony. If Natalie had come home any earlier, her life could have been in danger. Madam, the robbers in Paris are running rampant. There have been multiple cases of home burglaries reported in your area recently. I strongly advise you to relocate as soon as possible. The police officer processed the scene and earnestly advised her. At this thought, Natalie felt a wave of fear wash over her, breaking out in a cold sweat. Just then, a phone call shattered the silence. Bennett. When she received Bennett's call, Natalie felt a hint of surprise. Natalie, are you okay? I saw a police car heading toward your apartment from my balcony. Did something happen there? Hearing his gentle voice, Natalie finally felt a rare sense of relief. It's nothing, just that my house was suddenly broken into by a thief, and all the cash at home was stolen. I might not be able to go to school tomorrow. I need to look for a place to stay, and I should also find a part-time job to earn some living expenses. Natalie's words made Bennett's voice suddenly tense up. What, Natalie? Are you still at the apartment? I'm coming to find you. No need, Bennett, absolutely not. I can't let you handle such a dangerous situation alone. Bennett's voice was tense, carrying an authoritative tone that brooked no argument. Pack some essentials now. You'll stay at my place tonight. Natalie had no time to speak before Bennett hung up the phone, as if afraid of being rejected. 10 minutes later, Bennett drove here. I'm really sorry to trouble you, Bennett. Noticing Bennett's damp hair, as if he had just showered, made her feel even more apologetic. But Bennett didn't blame her. Instead, he smiled and took the luggage from her hands. Silly girl, wasn't there anything from your childhood that I didn't do with you? Why are you being shy now? Hearing his words, Natalie finally let go of her shame and followed him into the car. Bennett's house was located in an affluent neighborhood near the school. He led Natalie to the guest bedroom, where the floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city's nightscape. You can sleep here tonight. If you want to look at houses tomorrow, I'll go with you. Thank you, Bennett. I knew you were the best. That night, Natalie enjoyed a long-missed peaceful sleep. In her dreams, Fidel finally didn't appear. Instead, she saw a childhood memory of Bennett holding her hand as they played by the little lake. She fell into a deep slumber, a sweet smile gracing her lips. In the middle of the night, a thirsty Bennett went to the living room to pour himself a glass of water. As he passed Natalie's room, he unconsciously came to a halt. Gazing at the girl lost in pleasant dreams, he silently tightened his grip on the glass, finding himself smiling along without realizing it, lingering to watch her for a long while. The next morning, Bennett accompanied her to look at houses. After a whole day of searching, we still couldn't find any suitable properties. The listings the agent showed us were either too far away, too expensive, or in such poor condition, leaky roofs, broken doors, that they were even less secure than our current place. After walking all day, their legs ached. Natalie felt dejected, at a complete loss for what to do next. Seeing her low spirits, Bennett hesitated for a moment before nervously voicing the thought he'd been turning over in his mind. "Natalie, how about moving in with me?" Hearing this, Natalie froze in place, then abruptly turned to look at Bennett, but his expression was resolute, without a trace of evasion. As their eyes met, Natalie's heartbeat gradually quickened, her ears turning red. Ever since realizing his feelings for Natalie, Fidel had been walking around in a daze all day. Returning home, he could no longer see Natalie's smiling face, and his heart felt as if a piece of it was missing. Years of companionship had long made it impossible for him to live without her, and he never imagined that at the age of 30, he would love a woman so deeply. Ever since the day she left, he also lost interest in Ruth. "Fidel, why haven't you been close to me lately?" One night, after her bath, Ruth lay on top of Fidel, her revealing nightgown exposing the full view of her bosom to Fidel. In the past, the two would have certainly made love, but now, all he could think of was the innocent Natalie the first time she wore a lace nightdress. How he had instantly reacted, pulling Natalie eagerly down onto the bed. At this moment, Fidel, who was reading, felt a wave of discomfort. He quietly shifted away and turned off the bedside lamp. "Sleep, I'm tired." He turned his back, hearing Ruth's complaining voice behind him. Fidel found it increasingly difficult to accept Ruth's affection, and he didn't know what was wrong with himself. Since they were still in a relationship, he made excuses about working overtime at the company and slept on the spare bed in the office all day. "Any leads yet?" Fidel stared at the computer screen. The cigarette between his fingers burned down to the filter. In the surveillance footage, Natalie walked out of the villa dragging her suitcase, not looking back even once. "Not yet, Mr. Fidel. We've searched every bar we could find in the area." The assistant responded meekly beside him, Fidel his face ashen, a clear sign of extreme displeasure. Bang! The ashtray was violently thrown against the wall behind them, startling the assistant into trembling silence, not daring to utter a word. "Go find it again. If you can't find it this time, don't bother coming back." Fidel had a gloomy expression as he pressed his temples. Suddenly he remembered the male classmate who had previously delivered Natalie's graduation certificate. He had suspected back then that the boy liked her. Could the two of them really be together now? He immediately grabbed his car keys and rushed non-stop to S University. Outside the boys' dormitory, the boy who had been dragged out looked terrified. "Speak, Natalie. Where is she?" Seeing Fidel's furious expression, the boy frantically waved his hands in fear. "I really don't know where the senior went. I was just delivering some materials to her on Teacher Blake's instructions. I didn't even know what was inside the folder." It is said that Fidel let go of his grip. The boy seized the chance to flee in panic. While Fidel's knuckles turned white with tension, another lead had slipped away, just as he was about to leave the campus. A group of chattering girls approached from a distance. "Mr. Fidel." The leading girl's eyes lit up when she saw the person before her was Fidel, and she chased after him with a beaming smile. Fidel stopped in his tracks, sizing up the group, when he suddenly realized they looked familiar. These girls were the very ones who had humiliated Natalie at the party earlier. His expression remained unchanged as he coldly stared at the girl before him. The girl, seeing no reaction from him, flatteringly reintroduced herself once more. "Mr. Fidel, don't you remember me? I'm from the design department at S University. We met at that gathering before. What brings you to campus today? Would you like me to show you around?" She swayed her hips as she moved closer, her voice dripping with sycophancy toward Fidel. Mentioning that gathering, Fidel once again recalled Natalie's heartbroken and humiliated expression. A dull ache throbbed in his chest as he abruptly shook off the girl's hand. "At that party, wasn't it you who said Natalie was daydreaming?" Hearing this, the girl's expression shifted noticeably. "You're the one actually daydreaming if you think cozying up to me will make me fall for you or transfer money to you. I've seen plenty of women like you, money grubbing, gold digging, willing to do any dirty deed for cash. Am I right?" Fidel's eyes darkened, his voice hoarse, his gaze as sharp as ice. "I'm Natalie's lover. If any of you dare say another word against her, don't even think about staying at this school." With that, he stormed out of the school gate without sparing anyone a glance. The bullying clique stood frozen in place, unable to utter a word in rebuttal. It had been a week with no trace of Natalie, and Fidel's condition grew increasingly despondent, with frequent mistakes at work. On this day, overcome with longing, Fidel went alone to a bar to drown his sorrows. He sat in the booth, with bottle after bottle of whiskey lined up before him. The alcohol burned his throat, yet couldn't extinguish the suffocating pain in his chest. He sent out search parties one after another, but Natalie had vanished without a trace, leaving not a single clue behind. Fidel had always been a playboy who changed women as frequently as clothes. Before meeting Natalie, he'd dated countless others, yet for some reason now found himself utterly despondent. Back then, Natalie was still so naive, swearing she'd stay with Fidel forever. Only Fidel knew he would never make her his wife. After all, from beginning to end, Natalie was just a beautiful canary he had raised. But now, he truly regretted it. He realized that apart from Natalie, there was no room in his heart for anyone else. She was the only irreplaceable one. "Honey, come back, honey," Fidel murmured to himself with a glass in hand, calling out the nickname he used to call her most often. As if shouting it would bring her back to his side, he kept frantically pouring drinks down his throat, seemingly determined not to stop until he was thoroughly drunk. Just as he tilted his head back to down another glass, a familiar yet grating laugh erupted from the booth next to him. "Ha ha ha. You should have seen Natalie, that bitch's face at the time." Fidel's hand holding the wine glass froze abruptly, sobering him up almost instantly. "That voice, it's Ruth." He turned his head slowly. Through the dim lighting, he saw Ruth sitting with her back to him in the adjacent booth, clinking glasses and laughing with her girlfriends. "That bitch really thinks she can turn into a phoenix by perching on a high branch. How disgusting." When we returned to the country, I sent Fidel a message right in front of her saying my car broke down. While she claimed she was in a car accident, Fidel immediately chose to come to my side. That's when she finally realized Fidel never loved her at all. And remember when she got locked in the freezer and ended up hospitalized? Actually, it was because I smashed her father's keepsake, that worthless piece of junk watch she treasured like some priceless treasure. It annoyed me, so I threw it downstairs. And then that bitch actually pushed me down the stairs. Luckily Fidel got revenge for me. Ruth's voice dripped with sarcasm, even pride, while her pack of worthless friends mindlessly laughed along without any moral bottom line. Fidel listened silently behind them, his entire body trembling with shock. Learning the truth for the first time, his face turned ashen with veins bulging at his temples, his fury making him want to strike out immediately. It turned out that when she suddenly messaged him, it was only to prove to Natalie that she still loved her. As for the wristwatch belonging to Natalie's father, he had kept it carefully with him ever since she came into his life, treating it with such care that even a minor scratch would pain him, yet Ruth simply threw it down the stairs. Fidel had never imagined that the woman he had loved for years could be so venomous at heart. Remembering the desolate look in Natalie's eyes as she watched their intimacy, Fidel felt a pang of guilt, regretting that he had misjudged and kept such a scheming woman by his side. I was just about to hear what Ruth would say next when suddenly a strange man approached and greeted Ruth. "Hey beautiful. Are you here alone? How about joining me for a drink and a dance?" "Sure." Hearing Ruth's deliberately seductive voice, Fidel felt nothing but disgust. Ruth followed the man to the center of the dance floor, their bodies grinding in a heated dance. The man's hands grew restless, eventually settling on her rounded hips. From his corner seat, Fidel watched the scene, his grip tightening on the bottle until it creaked in protest. In the booth, Ruth's girlfriends laughed and teased. "I heard that recently Mr. Fidel hasn't been willing to share a bed with her. She's been desperately setting up dates with several men, looks like she's about to snag another one today." Hearing this, Fidel smashed his bottle violently. Beneath the blaring electronic music, the sound of shattering glass was nearly inaudible. "Fine, Ruth, since you enjoy cheating so much, I'll let you have your fun today." Having said that, he picked up an empty liquor bottle and silently walked behind the two who were dancing passionately. Seeing that Ruth didn't resist, the man boldly wrapped his arm around her waist and kissed her, while Ruth actively wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back with equal fervor. Crash! With a loud bang, the bottle shattered. Before Ruth could even process what was happening, the man in front of her was already bleeding from his head and collapsed to the ground, unable to stand. Instantly, people in the dance floor screamed and scattered in all directions, while Ruth stood frozen in fear, staring at the unconscious man on the ground. "Ruth, I see you're having quite the fun." Hearing that deep voice, Ruth instantly stiffened in place, trembling with fear, and behind her, Fidel stood at the boundary of light and shadow, his eyes swirling with terrifying storms. Ruth dared not look back. Yet she had no choice but to face it all. Slowly turning her head, her pupils constricted abruptly. Fidel stood terrifyingly in the shadows, his mere presence enough to send chills down one's spine. Ruth knew she couldn't escape now. Quickly kicking away the hand of the man on the ground that still rested on her, she forced a stiff, coquettish smile back onto her face, feigning innocence as she looked at him. "Fidel, what are you doing here? This is my friend. We were just having a casual drink." "Oh, friend." Fidel sneered coldly, staring at the blooded man beaten to the ground, his eyes seething with violence. "Are you this intimate with all your friends? So friends can grope your ass and kiss you? If I hadn't shown up, would you have fucked this friend tonight too?" Seeing Fidel's eyes brimming with murderous intent, Ruth trembled uncontrollably, her eyes instantly reddening. She forced a fawning smile and reached out to tug at Fidel's sleeve. "Don't misunderstand. You're the only one in my heart. You're my boyfriend. How could I ever be with someone else?" Slap. A sharp slap landed brutally on Ruth's face. The force so strong it sent Ruth staggering backward before she finally collapsed to the ground. Ruth clutched her left cheek, blood seeping from the corner of her mouth, her face twisted in terror. Everyone present was stunned into silence by this scene, instantly plunging into dead stillness. "What are you doing? Hitting a woman in broad daylight? Have you no shame?" Ruth's sisters at the distant booth saw this and rushed over, shoving Fidel. For they had no idea the vicious-looking man before them was Fidel. "You broke Natalie's father's keepsake, then told me she pushed you down the stairs. You kept secretly meeting her behind my back, saying I didn't love her, and deliberately acting intimate with me in front of her. It was you, this wretched woman, who drove Natalie away, then got what you wanted by dating me while still seeing other men." Fidel advanced step by step toward Ruth, looking down at her with contempt as he coldly listed each crime one by one, his voice chilling to the bone. With every word he spoke, Ruth's face grew paler. When did he find out? Could it be that he overheard everything during their conversation just now? At this moment, Ruth's best friends suddenly realized this man was none other than the renowned head of the prestigious Darren family conglomerate, Fidel. Their faces instantly turned deathly pale as they hurriedly tried to dissuade him. "Mr. Fidel, what do you mean by these words? Our Ruth has never done those things. She's been completely faithful to you. Heaven and earth as our witness." Fidel let out a cold laugh. He had already seen through their true nature. They were all birds of a feather, equally despicable. In front of everyone present, he took the microphone from the DJ booth, pointed it at his phone's receiver, and pressed play. Every word just spoken had been recorded, Ruth's vicious and sinister voice amplified through the speakers, instantly causing an uproar in the room. Only at this moment did Ruth truly feel fear. In panic, she clung to Fidel's leg, weeping and pleading. "Fidel, please, I know I was wrong. Forgive me just this once. You've stayed away from our bed for so long. I lost my mind for a moment." But Fidel had no patience left for her excuses. He violently kicked Ruth down, then mercilessly yanked her up by her hair. "Ah, it hurts. Fidel, please let go." Ruth was dragged by him until she screamed in pain, even kicking off her high heels. Everyone in the bar froze in place, not daring to intervene. Fidel dragged her out without looking back, his voice icy. "Now you're scared. Weren't you so proud when you bullied Natalie? Did you never imagine this would be your fate?" Ruth, bound hand and foot with rope, kept pleading for mercy in the back seat the entire way, but Fidel acted as if he couldn't hear her. Her heart gradually sank into despair. The dark black sports car stopped at the villa's entrance. Fidel silently carried Ruth inside, turning on the lights. He didn't rush to untie her, instead taking Ruth to the basement warehouse that had never been opened before. The air here was thick with the smell of dust, choking and unpleasant, surrounded by cobwebs. With no trace of life ever having been here, Ruth seemed to know what he intended to do, struggling in fear, whimpering in pain, her voice nearly breaking from desperate cries. "Fidel, this is illegal." But Fidel didn't even glance at her, throwing her to the ground, just as he was about to turn and close the door. He looked back at her with a cold stare. "If I don't find Natalie's whereabouts within 3 days, you can prepare to stay here forever, keeping company with the rats." With a loud bang, Ruth's screams were sealed away in the darkness. Natalie stood at the door of Bennett's apartment, watching him push the last suitcase inside, a light sweat still glistening on his temples. Ever since she had agreed to Bennett's proposal last time, he had started planning the layout of the house, clearing out many things to make space for Natalie's convenience, and early this morning, he had skipped class to drive over and help her move. "I really appreciate it, Bennett." Watching him carry her luggage back and forth, Natalie felt deeply moved. She took out a wet wipe to help Bennett wipe his sweat, but he froze as if suddenly petrified. Bennett straightened up, wiped his sweat, and smiled at her. Don't mention it, no need to be polite with your brother. Go check if you're missing anything, and I'll take you shopping. Natalie walked into the now somewhat familiar apartment, the spacious living room, the Parisian nightscape beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, even the wind chime flowers she loved most placed on the dining table, while every shelf had another spot left empty. He had prepared everything long ago for her arrival. Natalie felt her ears grow warm, her throat tightening slightly. Bennett, you're too good to me. I don't know how to repay you, yet Bennett merely curled his fingers and lightly tapped her head. Silly, what's this talk of repayment between us two? Being able to meet you again is more than I could ask for. From now on, consider this place your home. The breeze gently brushed by as Natalie gazed into his eyes, her heart skipping a beat before she nodded with a smile. One evening, Natalie was working overtime in the studio, completing an assignment for her mentor. Bennett worried about her safety returning alone and came to the studio to keep her company. When he saw the room filled with equipment and blueprints, listening to Natalie proudly explain her labor of love in detail, he felt genuinely happy for her. My competition is starting next month at the Downtown Art Gallery, and I'd like to invite you to come see it. Bennett sat beside Natalie, who was sketching, and casually brought up the competition. The competition. Hearing this, Natalie was instantly intrigued. She set down her brush and turned to ask curiously, "Such an important occasion, have you decided on your outfit yet?" Hearing this, Bennett was slightly taken aback. "Not yet. Why, are you offering to make me a suit?" Although Bennett had only said it in a joking tone, Natalie took it to heart. "Bennett, let me make you a suit. Is that true?" "Of course. Consider this dress as my token of appreciation, since moving in together as roommates. The two have been spending more and more time together. Apart from school, they also cook Chinese meals together at home." "Bennett, where did you put the plates we used yesterday?" Natalie tied on the matching apron Bennett had bought and ran to the kitchen to ask him, while Bennett set down the spatula, plating the dish before handing it to her. They gradually developed an unspoken understanding. They ate together, went to school together, washed up together, then returned to their respective rooms to rest. In the mornings, Bennett would prepare breakfast and wait for her to wake up. In the evenings, Natalie would bring him midnight snacks while he practiced piano. Sometimes, they would squeeze together on the sofa to watch movies. They would turn off the living room lights, pick a heartwarming film, and make it their final pastime of the day. But perhaps Natalie had been too exhausted from rushing to make Bennett's formal wear recently. She soon fell asleep without realizing it. Halfway through the movie, the lead couple in the background were confessing their love to each other. Bennett lowered his gaze to look at Natalie sleeping soundly against his shoulder, his heart melting completely. He didn't turn off the TV, but instead used the dim glow from the film to gaze tenderly at the person in his arms. She curled up like a cat, the movie's music flowing softly around them, her eyelashes casting delicate shadows in the flickering light. Bennett seemed unable to contain his emotions any longer. A kiss as light as a feather landed on her forehead. "Natalie, I've actually liked you for a long time." His voice was hoarse, as if speaking to her, yet also to himself. How he wished he could have said these words while she was still awake. In her sleep, Natalie unconsciously nuzzled against his chest. Bennett's heart skipped a beat. Shaking his head with a bitter smile, he turned off the TV and carefully carried her back to the bedroom. He sat by the bed, gently tucking her stray hair behind her ear. He closed Natalie's bedroom door, casting one last glance at her as he murmured to himself, "Good night." Fidel stared fixedly at the computer screen, his fingertips nearly crushing the mouse. The more he looked at the clues he had gathered, the more confused he became. By now, through Ruth's words, he had come to fully understand that Natalie had never cheated on him at all. The word affair in that short message might just be the excuse she used to leave him for good. Fidel rubbed his temples, his mind in a fog. Just then, his assistant burst through the office door in a panic, rushing in with the latest findings. "Mr. Fidel, we found her. Miss Natalie was last seen on surveillance dragging her suitcase to the airport." "What?" Fidel suddenly stood up with such force that his chair toppled over. He took the surveillance footage from his assistant, and the video indeed showed Natalie herself. "Did you find out where she's going?" Fidel asked urgently. The assistant glanced at him nervously. "I'm sorry, Mr. Fidel, Natalie, where could she be?" In an instant, Fidel recalled a distant memory when Natalie had once cautiously asked him, "Mr. Fidel, could I go to France to study design, just for 1 year?" But Fidel didn't answer her question directly. Instead, he pinned her to the bed, using the most brutal method to ensure she could never utter the word leave again. By then, Fidel had already developed feelings for Natalie and couldn't bear to let her go, so he forcibly kept her by his side, using money as leverage. Bang! Fidel's fist slammed onto the desk with such force that his teeth seemed on the verge of shattering. If he hadn't stopped her from pursuing her education back then, Would there have been so much trouble between them? Book me a ticket to France, the earliest flight possible. With that, Fidel grabbed his coat and strode out of the office. As the plane landed at Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport, Fidel gazed at the unfamiliar streets, his heart filled with longing for Natalie. Relying on past memories, Fidel arrived at the campus Natalie had mentioned to him just once. He had an unwavering intuition: Natalie must be here. The deep autumn in Paris, with plane tree leaves carpeting the school grounds. This was a renowned art school, and those who gained admission were by no means ordinary. Only now did Fidel realize that Natalie was never his caged canary. With her talent, she was destined to soar across vaster skies. Fidel was filled with bitter regret, repeatedly dialing Natalie's number, but it had long been disconnected. The only thing he could do was stand at Natalie's school gate, anxiously scanning every person coming in and out. Suddenly, Fidel spotted that familiar figure from afar. Natalie emerged from the teaching building wearing a beige trench coat, accompanied by a handsome and attentive young man who appeared to be around her age. Perhaps Natalie didn't notice, but the young man's gaze never left her, which made Fidel extremely irritated. Whatever the boy said, Natalie actually covered her mouth with a light laugh, her eyes and brows radiating an ease he hadn't seen in ages. Witnessing this scene, Fidel clenched his fists tightly. How long had it been since he last saw her smile? In his memories of that final month, all he could recall was her expression of disappointment and humiliation. Watching the intimate pair in the distance, Fidel felt as if an invisible hand had seized his heart, squeezing it so tightly he could barely breathe. Natalie. As if unable to hold back any longer, he rushed forward recklessly and grabbed her wrist. Natalie whirled around, her pupils contracting violently when she recognized his face. "Mr. Fidel, what are you doing here?" Natalie's voice held no surprise, only terror and revulsion at Fidel's sudden appearance. Her expression caused Fidel excruciating pain, his grip tightening unconsciously. "Come back with me, now." Natalie gasped in pain and struggled violently. "Ouch, let go of me, Fidel, it hurts." Hearing her cry of pain, Bennett, who had been standing nearby, suddenly shoved Fidel away, his eyes turning icy cold. "Let go, can't you understand what she's saying?" Without even glancing at him, Fidel kept his gaze locked on Natalie, forcing himself to stay calm. "Natalie, let's talk." At this moment, Natalie finally snapped, her eyes reddened as she shook off Fidel's grip and screamed at him in utter breakdown. "Fidel, wake up, there's nothing left to discuss between us. I stopped loving you long ago." At these words, both men present were momentarily stunned. The school gate was teeming with people, every passerby stopping to watch the spectacle. Natalie, seemingly unable to bear it any longer, accused Fidel with a choked voice. "I just wanted us to part on good terms. Why must you keep disturbing my life?" Hearing the tremor in her voice, Fidel finally snapped out of his daze. "Honey, I'm sorry." Each of her words cut like a knife. Fidel's heart bleeding as he quickly lowered his stance, reaching to hold her hand, but this hand was Natalie's to withdraw. "Don't call me honey anymore, Fidel. You've always treated me as just a substitute, a plaything, like some caged canary. I've had enough." Watching Natalie step back with tears streaming down her face, Fidel's heart twisted into knots. "No, my dear, I didn't come here to argue. I came to beg for your forgiveness. I only love you. I just never realized my own heart. Give me one more chance, please. I truly know I was wrong, my dear." Fidel's vision seemed to blur with mist. Though Natalie stood right before him, he felt her growing more distant by the second. Natalie's expression was colder than ever before. She let out a hollow laugh, as if she'd just heard the most absurd joke. "You love me. Only now do you realize you love me. Where was this love when you locked me in the freezer? Where was this love when you were reveling night after night with Ruth?" She practically shouted those words, each sentence feeling like she was tearing open her own scars. That year Fidel promised to be with her every single day from then on. Natalie believed him. But now Fidel's love is something she no longer cares for. "Fidel, it's too late. My love for you was worn away long ago by your own actions. The past is in the past, and I will never be with you again." With that, she brushed past Fidel's shoulder and left the campus, while he stood frozen in place, his eyes red. The word forever felt like a knife, plunging straight into Fidel's heart. Everything was already decided, and nothing would ever change again. The autumn wind howled, sweeping up a fallen leaf, and Fidel, standing before the school gate, looked all the more helpless. Fidel regretted it. He regretted not driving away Ruth when his old feelings made him waver. He regretted not helping Natalie when she was being ostracized. He regretted not insisting on telling Natalie that she wasn't a canary but the woman he loved most. No, Fidel kneeled at the school gate, his face streaked with tears of remorse, letting out a desperate cry. Bennett stood before him, his expression complicated, having heard the earlier conversation. He longed to punch this man. His clenched fist slowly loosened. Before stepping past him, he finally lowered his gaze and left one last remark. Natalie has already moved on with her life. If I ever catch you coming near her again, it won't end as simply as today. With that, he left without looking back. Following Natalie, since encountering Fidel at school early in the morning, Natalie had been in a complete daze. She was in poor condition all day. Breaking her pencil lead 3 times while sketching designs, her lines coming out crooked and uneven. She even burned her hand while making coffee at the campus machine. Fortunately, Bennett noticed in time to prevent any injury. Natalie, where should we eat later? Bennett was speaking to her, but Natalie stood there dazed, unresponsive. Natalie. It wasn't until Bennett waved his hand in front of her face that she suddenly snapped out of it. Sorry, I was just spacing out. Natalie's low spirits were so obvious that Bennett felt deeply unsettled. Natalie, let's skip class this afternoon and go to the amusement park together. Amusement park. Although Natalie couldn't understand why he was doing this, she still followed him to the amusement park far from the city center. The car came to a steady stop at the entrance of the amusement park, where only parents with children or student couples were entering through the gates. Bennett, why did you bring me here? Seeing her puzzled expression, Bennett unbuckled his seatbelt and smiled as he ruffled her hair. Because if you keep being so absent-minded, I'll be worried too. She looked into his eyes, as if all the unhappiness with Fidel had just been dispelled. Thank you. He dragged her through countless thrilling rides. Pirate ships, spinning swings, and freefall towers. They rode every thrilling ride in the amusement park, and that heart-pounding sensation shattered Natalie's worries. As the roller coaster climbed to its peak, Natalie clutched the safety bar tightly when she suddenly heard Bennett shout beside her. Natalie, scream out all your unhappiness. From now on, completely forget all those past sorrows, embrace a new life. Looking at the man beside her, Natalie suddenly felt her eyes sting. Instinctively joining in the scream, the howling wind rushed into her throat as Natalie resolved to blow away all the gloom surrounding Fidel, and in this moment, she finally laughed heartily. The night grew deeper, and both of them unwittingly grew weary. After grabbing a casual bite at the theme restaurant, they strolled to the base of the Ferris wheel. Natalie, after a whole day of craziness, let's end it with this. Bennett flashed his gentle smile again and took Natalie's hand. The two boarded the Ferris wheel, savoring this rare moment of quiet contentment, as their transparent glass cabin slowly ascended. The lights of Paris flowed beneath their feet. Gazing at the touching scene outside the window, Bennett watched Natalie's beautiful profile as she leaned against the windowsill, then spoke softly. Feeling better now, Natalie snapped out of her reverie at his voice and nodded at him with a smile. The two enjoyed the night view for a while until, just as the Ferris wheel was about to reach its peak, Bennett suddenly spoke in a deep voice. Natalie, there's something I've kept from you for many years. Natalie turned her head with an innocent expression, her eyes sparkling like stars. What is it? The usually mature and steady Bennett suddenly became hesitant, his palms sweating from nervousness as he slowly spoke. The day after you left, I was going to confess my feelings to you, but before I could tell you how I felt, you'd already left without saying goodbye. I tried many ways to find you later, but I was too young back then. Truly powerless, so I could only keep this affection hidden in my heart. Meeting Natalie's astonished gaze, he paused for a moment before speaking again. But I never forgot you. Until I met you again in Paris, it felt like a gift from God. I know you've just come out of a painful relationship and have always seen me as an older brother. I even thought that just being by your side would be enough. But now I'm growing greedier. I'm no longer satisfied with just being by your side. Will you be with me? At that very moment, their Ferris wheel cabin reached its highest point, with the entire Parisian nightscape unfolding beside them. Hearing these words, Natalie stood frozen in place as he slowly revealed the long-buried stirrings of his heart, suddenly feeling her eyes grow moist. The next second, the sky suddenly burst into a grand display of fireworks, as if deliberately serving as their dazzling backdrop. Natalie, what's your answer? Looking at Bennett's flushed ears, Natalie's breath caught in her throat. She imagined that day when she was forced to move away, how 15-year-old Bennett must have waited desperately, even tried every possible method to find her, only to be met with utter emptiness. Seemingly moved by this scene, Natalie couldn't help but shed a tear. I do. Instantly, Bennett's eyes widened dramatically. Trembling with emotion, he stepped forward and embraced Natalie, while fireworks bloomed behind them. As if bearing witness to their rediscovered love, the plane landed on time. Fidel got into the car his assistant had sent to pick him up. The car glided smoothly through the familiar streets, yet he couldn't muster any joy. Every corner of this city bore traces of Natalie. The upscale Western restaurant on the street corner was where Natalie had celebrated her birthday one year, with Fidel by her side. There, they had shared a kiss amidst the orchestra's celebratory music. They often strolled past the riverside bridge, and in winter, Fidel would tuck Natalie's hand into his pocket to warm it, while she laughed and kissed his cheek. Every moment of their relationship was deeply etched in Fidel's heart, impossible to erase no matter how hard he tried. Lost in memories of the past, Fidel finally arrived at the doorstep of his home. It had been a long time since he last returned here, because all traces of Natalie's existence had long since vanished from this place. He pushed open the basement door for the first time in ages, and a musty odor mixed with a faint stench rushed to greet him. A rustling sound came from the basement, as if someone was muttering to themselves. In the corner, a dark figure was curled up in a ball, crawling on the floor and eating something. Fidel couldn't take it anymore and turned on the light, instantly illuminating the room. No one knew about this basement. Fidel had been away for days, leaving no one to bring food to Ruth. Starving for too long, she survived by finding several crates of expired mineral water and some canned rations near the warehouse. Ruth had become emaciated beyond recognition, and the iron chains Fidel had fastened around her ankles had rubbed her skin raw, leaving bloody marks. At the sound of noise, she looked up in terror, her face drained of all color. Confined in this dim and cramped space for far too long, she had lost every trace of her former arrogance. Now appearing dazed and disoriented, Ruth was still wearing that body-hugging skirt from the bar, but now she was as thin as a skeleton, her former seductive charm completely gone. Fidel, let me out." Her voice was terrifyingly hoarse, as if she'd become a different person, crawling desperately toward Fidel's feet. Meanwhile, Fidel stood in the shadows, his gaze as cold as if he were looking at a pile of trash. "Please, let me out, I'll never dare again." Ruth trembled violently, clutching Fidel's pant leg as she kowtowed heavily against the ground. Seemingly numb to the pain, Fidel glanced at her indifferently and kicked her away. He grabbed her hair, his eyes revealing unconcealed malice. "You're lucky, I found Natalie. Really, that's great. You'll let me out now, right?" Looking at her smiling face, Fidel suddenly remembered Natalie standing with Bennett, his features twisted into a snarl as he raised his hand and slapped her hard across the face. "Because of your meddling, she's with another man now, saying she'll never be with me. How about it? Are you happy with this outcome?" Ruth was slapped so hard her ears rang, a buzzing noise filling her mind as blood seeped from the corner of her mouth. "No, I'm sorry, I misspoke." Fidel's eyes burned crimson as he suddenly backhanded her with another slap. Slap! Ruth was sent crashing against the wall by another slap, her lips splitting as a trickle of blood dripped down her chin. By now, Fidel was seeing red. The moment he saw Ruth's face, all he could think about was Natalie sobbing uncontrollably that day, and the male companion by Natalie's side. He ground his teeth so hard they nearly shattered, venting his rage by delivering several more brutal slaps to Ruth. Ruth's face swelled grotesquely, the once beautiful features now nearly unrecognizable. A thick mouthful of blood was spat out. His already weakened body lay nearly motionless on the ground, like a dying fish. At that very moment, Fidel suddenly noticed the cabinet in the corner where Natalie used to store her painting supplies. A wicked idea suddenly took shape. He viciously grabbed Ruth by the hair and dragged her beneath the wooden cabinet, in a fit of rage. Taking advantage of her defenseless state, Fidel violently overturned the cabinet. With a thunderous crash, the heavy solid wood cabinet slammed onto Ruth, who let out a piercing scream before falling completely still. He went downstairs to the dining table and poured himself a glass of water. He had dreamed all night, Natalie repeatedly saying she hated Fidel, leaving him drenched in sweat when he woke, his fingers clenched tightly around the glass, setting it down. He prepared to head to the basement to dispose of the body. He could slowly descend the stairs, yet he sensed something amiss. The basement door was wide open. He seemed to recall not properly closing it last night, merely pushing it lightly shut. Could the wind have blown it open? He stepped inside and turned on the light, only to find the room completely empty. Where did it go? Where on earth did it go? Fidel ran back upstairs in terror. The living room appeared unchanged at first glance, but upon closer inspection, traces of blood could be seen on the floor. Ruth, wasn't she dead? How could she have escaped? Fidel went to the study and turned on the computer to check the surveillance footage. It turned out that the solid wood cabinet fell askew last night. Not only did it fail to kill Ruth, but instead broke the old iron chain around her ankle. In the dead of night, when Fidel was sound asleep, Ruth limped up from the lower floor, briefly bandaged herself with the first aid kit, and changed her clothes. What followed was even more horrifying. Ruth sneaked upstairs with a kitchen knife and entered Fidel's bedroom. She walked to the bedside, raising the knife high as if about to strike, when unexpectedly the landline downstairs began ringing. Startled, Ruth hesitated no longer and immediately grabbed her backpack to flee. This scene made Fidel shudder with horror, leaving him overwhelmed by lingering fear. Had it not been for that phone call, he would have already died by her knife, but with her passport and identification documents confiscated by Fidel, where on earth could she go? Fidel shuddered in terror at the surveillance footage and immediately called his assistant. Find out for me, Ruth, where exactly has she run off to? You must coordinate with the police station in advance. Under no circumstances can she be allowed to call the police. After hanging up, Fidel slammed his phone violently against the wall. Why had he been so careless last night, letting her escape like that? Fidel lit one cigarette after another in his study, and the ashtray soon piled up into a tall mound. Just as he was waiting anxiously, his assistant's call came through. Mr. Fidel, we've got news. The Coast Guard retrieved a blood-stained jacket from domestic waters heading toward Vietnam. It's the same set Ruth was wearing when she escaped. Without identification documents, she must have fled the country illegally. Mr. Fidel, don't worry, a nameless undocumented wretch like her, no one will investigate even if she dies. Fidel listened expressionlessly to the report, then formatted the surveillance footage of Ruth fleeing covered in wounds. Since she managed to escape by her own means, he would let bygones be bygones and spare her life. After her departure, Fidel couldn't be bothered to care anymore. His mental state deteriorated further as he drowned his sorrows in bars day after day. He began changing women like changing clothes, each visit ordering the most expensive champagne tower before selecting his desired target from the crowd of ladies. Mr. Fidel, as per your request, all the candidates are here. Fidel stood facing a lineup of young, beautiful girls. Following the photo Fidel had provided, the bartender had gathered every girl in the bar who resembled Natalie. By now, Fidel was thoroughly drunk, his vision blurred. He pointed at the girl who looked most similar and kept her. While all the others were sent away, the chosen girl was overjoyed. Rumor had it that the Darren family's conglomerates Mr. Fidel had a long-term girlfriend and never socialized with outsiders, leaving others with no opportunity to curry favor with him. Now that the woman had disappeared, many were waiting for a chance to catch his eye. She obediently sat down beside Fidel, tending to him as his consciousness grew increasingly unclear. Here, Mr. Fidel, let me drink with you. Honey, is it really you? Have you forgiven me? Looking at the girl beside him, Fidel suddenly embraced her with overwhelming emotion, as if holding some long-lost treasure finally returned to him. The same almond-shaped eyes, the same lip shape, even the trembling curve of eyelashes when bowing the head were identical. I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong, Natalie. You're the only one I love in this world. As he spoke, he suddenly kissed the girl, prying open her teeth and probing inside with such force that he split her lips. Tears spilled from Fidel's eyes as he desperately wished Natalie would return to his side, to belong to him alone for a lifetime. The atmosphere grew increasingly delicate. Fidel let out waves of impassioned gasps, but the next second, pleasured moans escaped from between the girl's lips. Fidel suddenly startled with delight. This wasn't Natalie's voice. Fidel instantly regained the gloom in his eyes, as if a storm was about to erupt. You're not Natalie at all. Get out, Mr. Fidel. You were the one who personally chose me. Have you forgotten? I'll say it one last time. Get out. The liquor bottle shattered against the wall. Fidel's hand was cut by glass shards, blood continuously oozing out as the girl screamed and fled. From this day onward, for an entire week, Fidel would repeatedly choose a female companion, only to push them away in a fit of madness. The girls at the nightclub had already figured out his temperament and dared not approach this lunatic again. The excessive drinking took its toll, worsening his already fragile stomach condition. On this particular day, as a dancer was attending to him, Fidel suddenly collapsed as if struck by excruciating pain. Help! Someone help! Mr. Fidel is vomiting blood. The girl trembled uncontrollably in fear, worried that Darren's family corporation would connect Fidel's collapse to her. The bartenders rushed to the scene and immediately called an ambulance, sending Fidel to the hospital. In the emergency room, the hospital bed was stained red with the blood Fidel had vomited. Writhing in unbearable pain, his face deathly pale, he finally lost consciousness, under the glaring red light of the emergency room. The last image in his fading consciousness was Natalie. In the pitch darkness, Natalie walked away holding a stranger's hand, her expression as calm as if she were looking at someone she'd never met, and he kept sinking into a swirling black abyss, descending to its depths. Natalie. Fidel suddenly woke with a start, gasping for breath, and looked up to see the stark white ceiling of the hospital. You're awake. The attending physician stood beside him holding the diagnostic report. His expression grave. With such a severe stomach condition, how dare you drink so much alcohol? You had massive gastric bleeding. Do you realize that if you'd arrived any later, we wouldn't have been able to save your life? Only after hearing the doctor's words did Fidel gradually become aware of the aches throughout his body. With the burning, excruciating pain in his stomach being particularly pronounced, having narrowly escaped death's door, he suddenly felt a sense of awakening, in his dream. Natalie's final image seemed to be bidding him farewell. He knew deep down that his relationship with Natalie was beyond saving, and he might spend the rest of his life drowning in regret. After recuperating in the hospital for some time, Fidel was finally able to make an appearance. What puzzled him, however, was that despite countless calls to his assistant during this period, none had been answered. He would never do such a thing normally. He'd pick up within 3 rings at most. Could something have happened? With no time to dwell on it, he left the hospital in a foul mood and took a taxi alone back to the company, determined to get to the bottom of it with his assistant. But when he arrived at Darren's family corporate building, the security guard directly stopped him at the entrance. "What do you mean? Don't you know who I am? How dare you stop me?" Fidel grabbed an umbrella from the nearby stand, ready to explode in anger. When a familiar voice called out from a distance, "Mr. Fidel, your position has already been revoked. Please refrain from entering the building at will in the future," the assistant suddenly walked up to him, looking arrogant and haughty, and standing beside him was Fidel's arch-rival, President Lee. "Sorry, Mr. Fidel, but since you've been absent from the company for so long, the board of directors and all shareholders have jointly submitted a motion to remove you. From now on, the Darren family business will be renamed under the Lee family." Listening to the assistant's venomous and sinister voice, Fidel trembled with rage and struck the assistant fiercely with his umbrella. "Security, someone's causing trouble, throw him out." The next moment, Fidel was shoved to the ground by a group of security guards and beaten mercilessly. The once formidable Fidel had completely become a pawn in the trap he himself had set. Bennett's competition date was drawing nearer. For some reason, Natalie was even more anxious than he was. She sat in the studio, her pencil sketching rapidly across the paper. She was determined to design a one-of-a-kind performance outfit for him. The entire outfit was already fully designed, but Natalie wanted to add one more ingenious little detail to make this garment the most extraordinary of all. "How about embroidering a phrase here with silver thread?" she murmured to herself, fingertips lightly tracing the collar on the design sketch. Completely unaware that someone had quietly approached from behind. "What are you drawing?" Bennett leaned in, his breath brushing past the tip of her ear. Natalie startled and hurriedly covered the blueprint. "It's a secret, you're not allowed to look." Natalie's rabbit-like adorable expression made Bennett laugh. He gently planted a kiss on her forehead. "All right, I won't look. I brought you some late-night snacks. It's so late and you're still here. I'm worried you'll wear yourself out. After you eat, come back with me early, okay?" Hearing his comforting words, Natalie nodded obediently, opened the packaging, and enjoyed the delicious late-night meal with Bennett. Just as Natalie was clearing the dishes after the meal, Bennett suddenly noticed the design draft at the corner of the table. Seizing the moment when she wasn't paying attention, he swiftly reached out and snatched it away. "Bennett, you cheated," spotting his attempt to peek. Natalie reached to snatch the blueprint, but Bennett held it high above her reach. He pulled her into his embrace in one fluid motion, laughing with radiant audacity. "Let me see. What's this?" His voice came to an abrupt halt. On the blueprint, a sharply tailored tailcoat leaped off the page, with tiny musical notes embroidered at the cuffs, and hidden in the lining was a line of French embroidery, meaning "my great artist." Seeing her hidden little detail discovered by him, Natalie blushed shyly. "I told you not to look." She snatched the blueprint away, hiding her flushed ears, but the next second, he pulled her into his embrace, cradling the back of her head as he kissed her deeply. On the day of the competition, Paris' grandest art theater was packed to capacity. Bennett finally put on Natalie's hand-designed evening suit and stepped onto the internationally renowned stage. His slender fingers danced across the piano's black and white keys, pouring forth a beautiful melody, while Natalie sat in the front row of the family seating area, nervously clenching her fingers in silence. After all the contestants had performed, the judges announced the final results. The winner of this year's international piano competition, Bennett, amid thunderous applause. Bennett stood at the podium delivering his acceptance speech. "This competition, I want to thank a lady sitting in the audience, because without her, there would be no me today." He then walked toward the audience with his trophy, taking Natalie's hand under the spotlight. "Because my beloved is my lucky charm." Facing away from the crowd, Natalie noticed the embroidered words on his collar, "My great artist." Natalie let her tears fall onto the back of his hand and kissed him deeply. The match ended, and the crowd dispersed. By the Seine late at night, Bennett carried the exhausted Natalie on his back as they slowly made their way home, as if the entire world had faded away, leaving only the two of them. Natalie's high heels were held in Bennett's hand as she happily swung her feet on his back. "My great artist has worked hard. Congratulations on winning the award." Bennett smiled gently in thanks, lifting her slightly with a bounce. Natalie. Tonight's nightscape is truly beautiful. The streetlights stretched their two shadows long and longer, until they merged with the river, dissolving into ripples.